Torrential rain and high winds have battered the Philippines for the last 3 days.
Hundreds of families still require shelter, food, water and medical care.
How are you going to respond to this humanitarian disaster you are now being faced with?
Thousands of people have been affected.
Three missing.
In the meantime, you just need to make sure you are in a safe place.
Before a simulation can begin, comprehensive plans need to be made detailing precisely how the scenario will unfold. A variety of documentation must also be drawn up to facilitate the smooth implementation of the exercise and to maximize learning opportunities. To help guide the development of the simulation, a scoping visit is essential. There is no substitute for a personal visit by design team members to the pre-selected site or sites. A scoping visit has 3 main benefits. First, to identify the physical venues to conduct training and provide accommodation. Secondly, to establish relationships with key stakeholders. And thirdly, to get a first-hand knowledge of the environment in which the simulation will be held. This information will help the design team to build all other aspects associated with the exercise within the budget allocated and in harmony with stated objectives. Maintaining good relationships with those in local government is crucial, and it will be beneficial to meet personally those in authority at a regional or district level.
Hello, I'm Robert from Adelaide, New Zealand. Here's my card.
Okay.
It's a pleasure to be able to actually meet you at last and really appreciate the time that you've made available. This is Michelle from World Vision.
Hello, I'm Michelle.
Useful relationships could be formed with police forces, community leaders, or local disaster coordinating bodies.
They're the ones who responded in the previous real emergencies. They know exactly the strengths in those communities and the weaknesses.
You're working with them to actually develop together the actual simulation exercise. And that can only be done by actually being there, seeing, talking to people, learning about that environment, learning about past disasters, so that the scenario that's developed is realistic and based on real events.
It is vital that the design team visit the actual location where the simulation is to be held, as this will help them to envisage how the simulation might unfold and the physical resources available to the participants.
And so where did the flooding actually come from? Directly from the river over there? The simulation director needs to be able to visualise, needs to understand the environment, to be able to picture that, to know all of the different variations and dynamics that may actually interact in the scenario that's being developed. In this village, how many people actually live there? Do you know what the population is?
Probably around 500 and around 120 households.
Okay.
The nature of the emergency and the specific location of the exercise are not revealed to participants prior to the exercise initiation. However, the scenario is a core element of the simulation and should be given careful consideration during the design process.
They are fishing for a living.
Yes.
And now
It's all gone, yeah.
At its broadest level, the emergency could take the form of an earthquake, a cyclone, a tsunami, or a man-made disaster. But crucially, the emergency should be one with which the local community are familiar.
these are all covered by water.
So literally over the top of your head then?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
But on the other houses, it's higher.
It's even higher.
The water
than
level
that.
is higher, yeah.
Wow. And so when this happened, where did you go?
Oh, we are trying to pour out water, but the water is come up too fast, and there's nothing we can do. We just go up higher, higher length.
Maintaining a level of realism with the scenario is critical, so that community members will be able to role-play with minimal effort, and participants will have a sense of reality throughout the simulation. Detailed factual information relevant to the scenario needs to be gathered during the scoping visit. This information will be used to develop fictional news releases, statements from government or UN bodies, and specific events within the scenario. The scenario should be of a nature that unfolds and changes over the duration of the exercise, as this mirrors the reality of a genuine response. Details on the scenario and associated events can be written up as a narrative to guide the management team.
So we're going to Manila, yep, and then have a domestic flight all the way to Iloilo. Yeah.
And the regular flights every day?
Yes.
At the end of a scoping visit, it is beneficial for the design team to review their findings immediately and begin to apply them to the overall design of the simulation.
It's critical that we have that information all laid out as we finalize the design of the scenario. So more or less we would know not only the different events that happen, but also critical roles that we need to consider in making that scenario happen.
Including some confusing elements and diversions is always useful. Throughout the exercise, messages called injects are used to communicate specific events to participants, which will require their action in some form or another. Building surprising but plausible events relative to the training objectives is critical to the effectiveness of the exercise.
They're often based on real experiences, so that when they happen, people can actually identify with them. They are believable, and therefore people will respond in a more appropriate way.
Most injects will be prepared in advance and scheduled. However, space needs to be allowed for spontaneous injects to be used, as the management team and monitors observe helpful learning opportunities relative to the way participants and community members respond to the unfolding events. A variety of documentation needs to be developed for the benefit of both management team and the participants. For the management team, this includes an exercise schedule and exercise control plan. The exercise schedule is a work plan outlining key activities from the inception of the idea for an exercise through to the evaluation of the exercise after it is completed. The exercise schedule clearly identifies who needs to do what and by what time. It is the responsibility of the simulation director to oversee and manage this work plan with support from their deputy and the simulation administrator. The exercise control plan is the management's nerve center for all activities associated with the implementation of the actual exercise. This plan is not revealed to participants, but is vital for all personnel involved in conducting the exercise, including monitors and role players. The control plan details all the procedures, responsibilities, communication, logistics, and administrative structures in place to support control and direction of the simulated event during the exercise. It is an elaborate plan that provides instruction and detail for the exercise, much in the same way as a script for a play. Detailed within the control plan are the expected standards that participants should reach. These standards provide a valuable tool to enable monitors to advise and mentor participants in a consistent way. Documentation for participants will include pre-exercise and exercise-specific information. Where a formal training component is associated with the simulation, a pre-exercise workbook is beneficial and should be given to participants prior to arrival. This will be tailor-made to suit the training, but helpful content will include background information on the country in which the exercise will take place, information on key agencies involved, tips on stress management, summaries of international humanitarian standards, and items for a grab bag. The participant handbook, for use during the simulation, needs to be of a type that information can be added to it during the course of the exercise. Contents of this will include explanatory material about simulations, expectations on participants, logistics information, health and safety and security alerts, key contact numbers, exercise schedule including briefing times, and the scenario narrative. Associated news and sit reps can be added as the simulated emergency unfolds. The risk management plan is relevant to the simulation management team, monitors, and participants. At all times during the simulation exercise, it is imperative that the health and safety of all personnel involved is taken seriously. Forethought needs to be given to all critical hazards that could potentially impact the exercise and what their likely impact would be. Associated risk reduction activities should be identified and documented. Every individual associated with the exercise has a responsibility to manage risk.